Hello again, Dr. Jimmy, right at you. And this is my third video in my series on the history of the event Universal Orlando Halloween Horror Nights 24, held at Universal Studios, Florida in the year 2014. And again, it's the same day of Monday, the 16th of January. And at first I was only do one or two videos today, but I decided to go ahead and do the third one, especially when I realized once again there was something I meant to say earlier that I forgot. Now, I had already started talking about the haunted houses, and I gave my reminiscences of two of the haunted houses, From Dusk Till Dawn and Alien vs. Predator, both intellectual property houses that year and both in sound stages. However, I forgot to mention something more interesting, at least to me personally. I'd alluded to it in another video. The opening night of Halloween Horror Nights 24 was different for me than any other opening night I'd ever attended. In 2014, my friend Charles, who at that time was running a blog called Designing the Fear, had earned media privileges and was able to attend the press event, the preview, and later the press party, which is held on opening night at the event. And he declined to take his girlfriend with him that night because I think she was working or something, or there was some other issue, and said instead he'd take me because she couldn't go. And I said, "Oh, I'm happy, thank you. I would love to go. I got to be his +1." So I attended that party. It's really neat. Let me just tell you how that works. First, you go up into the sort of VIP lounge above the ticket offices, you know, and you could actually see them doing the Purge opening moment thing on the balcony outside. But then after the park was open, they took all of us down to an entrance off to the side and got us into the park, and then took us to the Plantage's Theatre, where they do the horror makeup show. And they had it all set up for this press party, and they gave us the special pass. This is the lanyard they gave. It just says Universal Orlando Halloween Horror Nights on the lanyard, but what's important is this thing hanging from it. See? It's a media. Therefore, you had a media pass, which gives you access. And with that, you could go into that little party. And they had food. Lots of wonderful food. There was a guy making, like, risotto. And there were all sorts of hors d'oeuvres, hot ones, cold ones, desserts. And an open bar. Not a cash bar, an open bar. You could have all the cocktails you wanted. Did I get schlocked? I probably could have, but I chose not to because I wanted to remember the rest of the night. But I had more than one or two martinis. It was lovely. And then later there'd be presentations, especially for the media people, where Mike Aiello and others would talk about what would happen that night. Or you could interview people. I declined to that because I'm not actually the media. I was just a guest of one, and I was there mainly to see this. But scare actors came in, and you could hobnob with scare actors that were hanging out with you before they went out to their set in the streets. And so that night, here's a picture of me that night, and you can see me in the photo here. I'm actually got a beverage in my hand, and I'm hanging out there in that theatre, and I'm wearing my various passes. I've got, that's my necktie, and a legendary truth lanyard, which would contain the pass I would use on the other nights, but I had it with me just in case. I wanted to leave the park and come back in if didn't know if that would happen. But over here, you can see next to me the sea captain from the Scare Zone on Hollywood Boulevard. And so it was a nice hanging out with him. Oh, it got dark. Now, cocktails reminds me that there is something else that I had not yet told you about that I normally do, at least I have recently, and that, of course, are the cocktails I created to commemorate the haunted houses. in 2014. And again that year, for every single haunted house, I crafted a special cocktail. Now this last year, I actually made videos about the cocktails, but in 2014, I hadn't started doing the cocktail videos yet, and so I simply posted them on Facebook. So now let's see, which is the one? Yes, the From Dusk Till Dawn cocktail for that house. That featured tequila, obviously, because it takes place in Mexico. I put in Midori because it's green, like the color of the snakes. Some pineapple juice, and some roses lime juice, and a drop of blood. A drop of blood, well, grenadine actually. So it was sort of a fruity tequila, had, you know, melon, pineapple. It was actually really good, and it looked like this, served up straight in a martini glass. See, very nice cocktail. That was my From Dusk Till Dawn cocktail. Right. So the next one, let's see, where is AVP Alien versus Predator? Yes, and that one, this cocktail has Jägermeister for the Predators. Why? What does Jägermeister mean? It means Master Hunter in German. Therefore, what else for the Predators, right? Tequila for the aliens. I'm not sure why I chose. Oh, because that's rude, actually, if you think about it. Aliens, Mexico. In this age of Trump, that's even funnier. Yes, I'm going to build a wall, keep the aliens out. Yes, what happens when they burst through your chest? I don't know. And Chambord and ginger ale for all us caught in between, because I thought that might be a good combination. And you got this served up in a plastic cup. It looks like there was some lime or slime. Yes, lime, not slime. Lime used to garnish it, and that was on ice. It came up sort of a brown color, but it was really delicious, even though you could think Jaeger, but with the other stuff balancing it out, it actually made quite lovely flavor. Even if you think Jaeger and tequila, oh my God, but the Chambord and the ginger ale kind of made it work. So those were my first two cocktails, and I had to mention those because, of course, I didn't make videos for the cocktails back then, and how would you know about it unless you can see my Facebook page? So I put those in for you, and hopefully you'll like them. If you're over 21, you can drink responsibly. Those were all made at Finnegan's Bar and Grill at Universal with ingredients that were at the bar. I didn't, last year I went beyond that and made stuff at home with cocktails, ingredients I got myself. But back then I was still going to Finnegan's and having the cocktails made there each night using ingredients they had at the bar. So let's get to the third haunted house. And the third, here's another thing. I was still talking about that party. It was a fun party, and there were cookies and desserts, but then they took you on an RIP tour. I've never done one except during that press party. This is the one time I ever got one of these little puppies. Used to glow in the dark, but obviously the liquid has lost its phosphorescence nowadays. But this, you wore this to identify you, and they took you to every single haunted house and cut the line. You got to go in. I've never done that before or since. It was lots of fun, and especially because it's raining. It was a traditional torrential downpour on opening night, and I'm all dressed nice. I have my umbrella though. That's why I carry the thing, not just to use as a bit of a walking stick, but also because sometimes you need it. And got into all the haunted houses, and then after that we went to see Bill and Ted and sat up front, which is great. And then we also, I think, he took us to several of the scare zones as well and talked about, because they give you that whole background for all the haunted houses and stuff as they take you to each one, especially because you're supposed to be members of the media. I was just a guest of a media member, but still, it's lots of fun, and you get to see one of the shows, Bill and Ted, and it was just fun. A really good opening night for me. Unfortunately, the following year, Charles had to take the guy who had bought his blog and had taken over the site and took him as his guest. And after that, he left designing the Fear over to the guy who bought it, and no longer is associated with it anymore. And so I don't have anyone else to get me in the media yet, unless there's some nice person in the media who'd rather hang out with me instead of their date and take me back sometime. Who knows if that will ever happen? Probably never again. So it might have been my one shot to enjoy that. But in fact, last year they didn't even have a press party like that, I don't think. They did. They didn't do the preview the night before the cast member preview. They didn't do the media preview presentation. They just did the party. Somebody said they didn't want them to see anything till they had drinks. I don't know why. It was a good event last year. But maybe someday I'll get to go to the party again. I don't know. I'd like to, but who knows. All right, third house. And again, I've been sort of putting it off because it was probably my least favorite house that year. It wasn't a bad house, but it was, well, I think it's most people's least favorite house. Dracula Untold, Reign of Blood. Now, Universal had tried to reboot the Universal Classic Monsters with a new Dracula movie. Turns out they still plan to do that, but they're not going to use that as part of this new franchise. So they're going to reboot Dracula later on and start all over again with a new Universal Monsters franchise this year with The Mummy. That's going to be the new reboot of The Mummy, and that's going to happen this summer. So the Dracula Untold was the first attempt, and they decided that didn't really work so well. And that's part of the problem, you see. They wrote out the script, and then they didn't like the script, and they went back and reshot it and made a very different movie from what they'd originally written out. Trouble is, the movie didn't come out until October, when the event started. And what they gave the people who were working on the haunted house was the script and some photos of the shooting that they had started and then would later scrap. So there are scenes in the movie that the lovely people at Art and Design started building for the house that never made it to the movie. And then later, at the last minute, they called them up and said, hey, you have to change those scenes because they're not in the movie anymore. And he says, we've already built the house. We can't change it now. And so, we can't replace it. We've already got the people cast and character and everything. So they had to do the house as originally planned. And so it's sort of like the house has, things you would find in the bonus features of your Blu-ray that aren't in the actual movie, or deleted scenes in the house, which is kind of odd. And the film wasn't that terribly good to begin with, and this particular haunted house reflected the source material, I think. Although I think they did a damn fine job attempting it. And I didn't dislike the house, but overall, of all the haunted houses, on the bottom of the list. So it is based on the film, again, however, based on treatments and photos they got and a little bit of footage, but not the final product, because they didn't see it before they built the house, right? So you go in, and you're in Dracula, you're in front of a huge castle, and there's, signs of impalement and everything, and dead bodies and all of that, and creepy music, and you find yourself in caverns, and you go through them, and there's crypts, and there's this horrible figure who's sort of like an emperor. There's these Roman statues, and a Roman emperor like, Caesar or Nero or Caligula, who is this statue that comes to life like the Weeping Angels. And it's like, what's that about? That's not even in the movie, because the movie came out in October, and if you went and saw it and you said, what? Well, the original idea was that vampire that had turned Vlad Tepes into a vampire himself when he drank the cup of, you know, really black evil shit stuff. I guess it was Caligula's blood, and changes into a vampire himself. The guy who turns him is meant to be the Roman Emperor Caligula originally, before he became a vampire. That whole subplot is removed from the movie. You know that guy is in the cave, but you don't really know who he is, the evil ancient vampire, though he does show up at the end of the movie in modern times. But that's why the Roman statue bit, and it's like, otherwise you're confused by that. So a lot of the house was one of the big features after that, a big centerpiece of the house, is a caravan, a gypsy caravan. And you go in this gypsy caravan, and it's just decorated with all kinds of wonderful stuff and little cages to put children in. And there's a horrible witch who's supposed to be Baba Yaga originally in the movie. Okay, the famous witch from Russian folklore. She got edited out of the movie. So none of this stuff is in the movie. And she doesn't even look all that hideous. She's just an old lady. And the first thing you think of when you see her, at least for me, because she comes popping out, and you're in this place with all these strange little toys and like gingerbread house type gypsy caravan, and she gives very important information to the impaler about his curse and all of that. But in this one, you just see this old lady, and she's up there, and it's like, you expect her to say, "Have fun storming the castle," because that's who she reminded me of, the character from The Princess Bride. Lie, liar, liar. So it's kind of a little bit surreal. If you did see the film when it came out, halfway through the event, I think it opened like October 5th or something like that, and then you see, oh, wait a minute, what's going on? Then a lot of it is a village and a castle that's been stormed by Turks. So you have all these Turks, and they're fighting against these vampires. A lot of the villages are turned into vampires. And so you see, and Dracula himself shows up several times, but if you blink, you might miss him. And on a bad walkthrough, you may not even see him. But when he does show up, he usually is attacking one of the Turks. He sort of saves you. Like, there's all these arrows coming through, thup, 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 and you feel like the wind blowing past you, and you see people getting shot with arrows, and they fall down, and all of that's going on. And suddenly there's this big evil Turk with a scimitar, like he's going to slaughter you, and then all of a sudden, here comes Dracula, Vlad the Impaler, and he comes out, grabs the guy, bites him in the neck, and drags him into the boo hole. And it's like, oh, so he's saving us. I thought he's supposed to be after us. Shouldn't Dracula be after us and scaring us? And yet, actually, this happens a couple of times. You know, you've got him going after the sort of human warrior that's going to kill you. And there's lots of stuff like that, and lots of carnage, lots of dead bodies, and blood, of course, and, you know, other villagers like monks and old ladies and women who've been turned into vampires. And there's some big, beautiful set pieces as you go through this, and eventually through the castle again, and Dracula pops up one last time before you leave. But again, not as many scares. And if you didn't see the movie, you have no idea what's going on. And even if you did see the movie once it came out, you'd be confused by the scenes that got left out of the movie. And so it was rather ill-conceived in a lot of ways. And I don't blame the people who made the house, of course, because it wasn't their fault. And I think they did a valiant effort, and I rather liked it. But it was also really dependent on the show scene stuff. And if you miss the show scenes, you know, the little kills as you go through, the dramatic action, you know, it becomes like theater. If you miss that, then you don't know what's going on. And that's always a problem in a lot of these houses, if they rely on a show scene instead of just a straightforward scare. but it was still a good house. So not the best, but I'd say the least of a series of good houses that year. All right, so moving on, the fourth. Oh, wait a minute, cocktail. Yes, the best part of Dracula Untold was the lovely beverage I made for it. Let's see, and here it is. Yes. For Dracula Untold, Reign of Blood, that was the full name of the house, a Bloody Mary, impaled with a frightening unseen ingredient. And the unseen ingredient I chose was Sambuca. And it was appropriate because adding that to the Bloody Mary gave it a sort of flavor that reminded me of flavors from that part of the world. From places like Budapest, where I had just been in 2013. I went to Portugal, and after that I went to Vienna, and then I went to Budapest when I was my little trip to Europe. And it had a rather goulashy flavor, sort of. The spices, the combinations of the cocktail, the Bloody Mary mix. It had that sort of tomato and a little bit of that sort of licorice flavor. It really gave an interesting Eastern European flavor, I thought. So I thought it was appropriate. Here, let me get here's a picture of the thing in question. As you see, I made sure that they impaled the olives with a sword and had a nice stalk of celery and I think some lime as well in this particular version of a Bloody Mary. Made at Finnegan's Bar and Grill. That was the Dracula Untold Reign of Blood cocktail. All right. So the fourth haunted house was the last one in a soundstage, and like all the soundstage houses in 2014, it was an IP, and it was one that was somewhat familiar. It was the third straight year they did The Walking Dead. And they said, yes, for the first time ever, we bring back the same haunted house concept for a third year. Walking Dead 3 years in a row. Yeah, that sounded kind of exciting, except they did it again, and it became 5 years. But the third Walking Dead house was probably the best of the lot. The house was called The Walking Dead End of the Line, and it was based entirely on the fourth season of the program, and they try to cram the entire fourth season into one big house. This was the first of the so-called Uber houses. What's an Uber house? Well, you see, there's an app, and when you type it in, the house comes to you, comes to your doorway, and then it drives you and scares you somewhere that you want to go. No, that's a different Uber. Never mind. It's like a taxi thing, and it tricks you because you don't realize it might be an upcharge because of bad weather or something, and then you find that added to your bill at the end. No, actually, it meant mega house, Uber house, the first extra large house. This was big. Soundstage 25. This was the first time they ever used Soundstage 25, which is one of the largest sound stages, and they used up almost all of it for this huge, huge house, which would take you from the beginning of that season, which starts in the prison and goes all the way to the end at Terminus, the end of the line. So you start out almost where you left off at the end of the last haunted house, the one they had in 2013. You go into the prison, and actually the queue was rather cool too. Even if you didn't use Express, as you go along the front of the house, there's stuff outside the house that you can look at. There's been the battle, the battle between Woodbury and the prison. And they've got all kinds of stuff to make it look like a prison yard outside. And there, on the ground, is Herschel Green's head. They can't use the human characters in the Walking Dead houses. They can only use zombies. But if a human being is killed, they can show like his legs. They had Tyrese's Tyrese, not Tyrese, the other one before that, T-Dog. His legs were in a house one time, and this was Herschel's head. And so Herschel Green's head decapitated, looks just like the man. His head is there, his eyes are all white, dead, and Michonne's katana nearby, because I think that's what the governor used to lop his head off before Michonne then took it and took care of the governor. There's that. I think it was Michonne who got the governor at the end. But so he's there, and then you go into the haunted house and you're back in prison again. And you have some scenes similar to the ones at the end of the previous year's houses with the prison, only now there's some of them are sick because of the plague, and you got the guy hanging from the ceiling that had been sick, and and there's some creepy little inside jokes. There's the little dead bunny rabbit, or not, actually it was a rat that had been cut open and had been impaled and dissected on the wall. Because the creepy little girls, remember the creepy little girl that was Sophia was taking care of, but she was just a bit off in her mind, and she was torturing animals inside the prison. So you see the evidence of that, and other little things like that in that area. But once you get out of prison, then you go to the big lot. No, it's not called the big lot because that's bad, Jimmy. Don't say big lot, because that's the real name of the real store. It was called the Big Spot. Yeah, whatever it is. And I guess they couldn't even use that name. It just says Spot or something. But you're in that big, huge department store. And so you walk around the big, huge department store, and the helicopter has broken through the damn roof. And there's rotor blades, and there's zombies up there, and there's zombies down in the store. And the store is really neat because all the groceries, and you go through the aisles, and the zombies are coming after you. And they have groceries on the that have all kinds of clever inside jokes that refer to people in A and D. So you've got Grommel, I think, peach schnapps, or you have some hot sauce and some beans that have names. Aiello spaghetti sauce, yes, of course. Mike Aiello is Italian, so what's more appropriate than pasta sauce? That says Aiello brand pasta sauce, that sort of thing. So you have all this fun stuff as you go through there. When you get out of the department store, and oh, there was another thing in the house. When you're still in there's a picture on the wall of a boy named Taylor Strickland, who is the employee of the year, and he had won from a basically it was an auction. And Taylor, of course, does the Orlando Informer site nowadays. And he went to an auction, and Taylor is, how do I put this politely, not poor. So he was able to outbid the others and get himself in the house. It was, I think the proceeds go to charity, so it's not a bad thing. But he won this bid to get a reference to himself. And so there's a picture of himself as the Big Spot Employee of the Month. A little inside gag there too. There are lots of these little inside jokes, both referencing Easter eggs for the program, but also for people behind the scenes at Horror Nights, like the name of the warden for the prison, for example. When you pass that window, was a person involved with the event as well. So you go on through. Well, I think it was Robert Strickland. Name was in the prison warden window, because that was Hellgate Prison's warden, and they used that over again. So you go on, and let's see what was next. I think what was next was the scenes in the country club. I might be wrong, it's been a while, but there are many scenes in this house. It was a big house. The country club is fun. That's where, if you remember, they got separated. If you recall, after they got out of the prison, they had to go different ways, and people got separated. And some of the people ended up going and one of the people got separated was Beth and Daryl, and they're off on their own from the rest of the group. And if you recall, they go to a country club, and Beth and Daryl had Beth had said she wanted a cocktail because she never had drunk any alcohol in her life, and she wanted to try a cocktail for the first time, and she didn't give a fuck. She wanted to have something to drink, god damn it. And Daryl, and they went to this country club. So you go in the country club, and there's like one of this is like this dead woman. She wasn't a zombie, she'd already been killed, and they had the sign around her saying "rich bitch," because obviously the country club had been raided by bad people after the apocalypse, and they punished people that they thought had too much money than they deserved, you know. And you saw the bar scene with all the broken glasses, and that is where Beth wanted to try some peach schnapps. However, Daryl said, no, that's not what you should drink. And then you have the scene that happens next, which is a mobile home, and you're inside that mobile home. That's some redneck at a redneck cabin, whatever it is, where there was a still. And so in there is where the moonshine was drunk instead of the peach schnapps. And that's where Beth finally got to drink some moonshine. And it's rather hysterical, little Easter egg in that scene. And of course you got zombies in all the scenes coming after, because that's the only scare actors in there. But when you're in the scene with the and some of them are burnt and horrible, I think, right around here. But in the scene with the moonshiner's cabin, or whatever it was, there is this hysterical redneck ashtray that's shaped like a woman's bra. Basically, it's her upper torso with a big bikini and big boobs, and all of the little cigarette butts are in there. And I love that. I love that prop. That was hysterical, and it was just like what they would have in the TV series, I believe. So that was that. And I've reached my limit. So in part 4, I shall resume The Walking Dead and continue with the other scenes in this big Uber house next time.